CC&Rs are in your document. Thank you very much. That wasn't my voice, I promise. We're not doing ventriloquism tonight. But in 2014, the legislature came and had a proposed bill that ended up being put into law. And what it said is, in order for you, or excuse me, specifically the statute says, if you have a provision in your documents that allow you to have these restrictive covenants, allowing you to enforce public roadways, number one, your CC&Rs must have been recorded with those provisions prior to January 1 of 2015, all right? And that's been the law that we've been operating under for quite some time. To my understanding, Johnson Ranch's declaration was recorded in 1999. Does that sound about right? So clearly you meet that threshold. So any of the provisions in your documents, which you have about a half dozen, everything from campers, boats, trash cans, various things that you have enforcement rights as an HOA over those public roadways, all right? In 2023, the legislature came back at the behest of certain homeowners throughout the state that were wanting some change in this regard. They put forth and were able to get a bill sponsored that ended up being signed into law. That bill said, if you have that right, which Johnson Ranch already does have that right, then in order to keep that existing right, you must do certain things. One is you have to go to a vote of the membership. That's exactly what this town hall meeting is for, is to allow you all to get the information so you can determine how you want to vote on that. But it requires you to go to a vote. You must establish quorum, and then a majority of those persons voting in that meeting, in order for you to keep the existing right, must vote in favor, so that would be the yes vote. If you don't get quorum, or if the majority of persons that are voting vote no, then the existing rights you have in your CC&Rs are gone. Now that doesn't mean we're going to go and remove them specifically or expressly out of your CC&Rs. They're going to still sit there and look like they're part of your rules or your enforcement rights, but the statute supersedes those provisions. And so if you do not vote in favor, then you need to know those provisions will no longer have any legal valid effect. Does that make sense? Okay. And then just to kind of put a bow on it, the legislature, they passed this in 2023, and they gave basically a sunset date or a deadline by which this has to take place, which is June 30th of 2025. So every single association in the state of Arizona that has these existing rights and wants to keep them will have to go to a vote of their membership, pass it by a majority of those voting when they establish quorum, and that has to be done prior to June 30th of 2025. So we're somewhat at the deadline. This is it. And I have been posed the question by many of the associations we represent, which is, okay, well, if we don't satisfy the requirements or we're not successful, and maybe the majority of people vote no, can we have a second bite at the apple and try again? The answer is no. It is a one and done proposition. So hopefully part of the purpose of this town hall meeting is so that you all can get the information that you need, ask the questions that you would desire, and then that way you can make an informed decision going forward, because this will be your chance to direct the path of how Johnson Ranch operates forever going forward. If you vote to retain, then that means those existing rights are still there. Just like many other restrictive covenants that you have within your CC&Rs, you as a membership might have the ability to make some modifications to that in the future if you choose to do so. But if you don't pass this and it fails, then it's gone forever. And you cannot revise your documents to add it later on, because that would be in contradiction to the statute. Does that make sense? All right. Anything else you want at this point? That's as summarily quick as an attorney can ever do it. Yes, sir.
Legislature change their mind, or modify, they could change their mind in the future.
Very good question. So if it's all right, I'm going to repeat it so everyone can hear. The question was, because the legislature has shown a propensity for changing their mind back a decade ago and then again a couple years ago, can they then change their mind again going into the future? The answer is yes. And that does happen from time to time. From my standpoint, from a legal counsel standpoint, we don't usually prognosticate what is going to happen in the future. What we want is our clients to do what keeps them clearly within the bounds of the law. And if the law changes, that's okay. We can adjust to those changes in the law. But we never want to be afoul of those provisions or those statutes, because that's where time and expense comes into play. And we want to help avoid that as much as possible for you.
What is the purpose of the change in church?
Very good question. So the question is, what is the purpose of the change? Why did certain homeowners want this change? Well, I would be assuming, but the group that wanted this is a group that has a propensity and a tendency to try to strip rights and authority away from associations, from community associations. And so if you were asking me my simplistic opinion, it probably is because they want less and less involvement of associations into the lives of individual members. Yes?
So if the community would, by chance, incorporate, and the city would establish their own ordinances, would it override what is in the CC&Rs for the HOAs?
So you're already a nonprofit corporation. And so are you saying go unincorporated? Is that what you're suggesting? Oh, if you became the town of Santan, got it. Yes, so if you became a town, a recognized town, and they had their own ordinances, that's fine. Right now, you're already subject to the county provisions with regard to certain things. And I'll let the sheriff's office and rural metro kind of chime in wherever you feel necessary and appropriate, but those ordinances already exist to some degree. There is a government body that already oversees those things. The beauty, at least in part, is that you live in a wonderful community where your documents already support additional efforts to ensure compliance. And under that, you have a devoted compliance department that is helping to make sure that certain things and standards for your community are routinely met on a regular schedule. Assume for a moment you didn't have that at all, then what you would be left with is calling the county, calling the sheriff, calling someone for the government, a non-emergency line, and saying, hey, this person hasn't moved their trailer for the last 6 weeks. Can you please come help me out? And depending on this, the time allocation as well as the person power that they have to devote to those types of issues, they will address it on a basis to which they're able to do so. As opposed to, you already have a compliance officer and department, your assessments are already facilitating those services to be rendered, and it's done almost quote unquote in-house through your HOA.
The question is, if we become incorporated and the city establishes their own ordinances, how would it affect the CC&Rs? They would take precedence over the county.
Only when there's a conflict. So if the question is, if you incorporate and you now have Santan, the town of Santan ordinance that says no street parking, those would be there. Those are great, but you would have to go to the source for enforcement, which means Santan, if they have a department that handles that and that they can get to it. But if they're not inconsistent, then simultaneously the HOA provisions would still be valid so long as the vote is voted in the affirmative to keep the existing rights. If you don't vote to keep those existing rights, then your only option would be to utilize either the sheriff's office or the town of Santan if and when that becomes a possibility.
So has anyone educated the sheriff's office in saying they have to enforce these? Because we called and reported things parked on the street for months at a time, and they said they can't do it.
Yeah, so I'll let them somewhat address that, but I will tell you, this is not my first rodeo. I've done this type of town hall discussion with about a dozen or 24 different master plan communities. That is a common refrain that I hear a lot, which is individually, as a homeowner, I'm witnessing this. I'm reaching out to the city of Phoenix, Surprise, Gilbert, whatever the case may be, and I'm not getting a response. You actually just got a look into what life might be if this doesn't pass. And the reason I say that is, in our discussions with some of the people at the Capitol, when this was being proposed originally, the individuals that represent the League of Cities and Towns, This is not something that they magically all of a sudden have a budget for. Is that accurate? And so the ability to just flip a switch and say, we can step in immediately into the shoes of what HOAs have been doing for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years is not going to be an easy or smooth transition necessarily. And so for me, it begs the question of how do they even catch up with that need? Because right now they're staffed for the necessities of the county at this point. If they now have to task themselves with now doing this policing and enforcement work of roadway in this fashion, they may need to hire more people. They may need to raise taxes in order to pay those people that are brought on. There's a whole trickle-down effect of this vote, frankly. And so, do you have anything you want to add to that? Is that, if I'm inaccurate in any way, please let me know.
Well, I can tell you from the standpoint of the sheriff's office, parking violations, that's the lowest priority call that we respond to. And just to kind of give you an example, this past Friday, we had several deputies call in on day shift. We had 4 deputies and 2 sergeants running the entire region. And the region that we all reside in, I also reside here as well, is basically Arizona Farms and everything north. Gold Canyon, Apache Junction, all of Santan. It's a massive area to cover. So you can imagine when we're responding to emergencies, agency assists with rural metro medical calls, fights in progress, domestics, when that abandoned vehicle call comes in, quite frankly, patrol supervisors have to make decisions where we just remove those calls from the board because we do not have the resources to respond. And that's just reality. We're super busy out there, as is rural metro, and we do the best that we can, but we have limited resources, and we have to basically triage and respond to the highest priority things that are going to affect, immediate property damage, death or serious physical injury. Those are the things that we put at the top of our priority list. And sadly, the parking issues, it's really, really hard for us to get around to them. And I'll give you some insight, just for example, like abandoned vehicles. You contact us and tell us, a car's been parked in front of your house for, let's say, a couple months. We get a deputy to go out. We don't just tow the vehicle. We have to red tag it. And that starts a 72-hour clock. And then if that vehicle remains unmoved after 72 hours, then by statute, we have the ability to tow and remove that vehicle. That follow-up a lot of time, quite frankly, doesn't happen because, again, the limited resources. And again, it's difficult for us. There's a lot of other things beyond abandoned vehicles. Your council also made comment reference to basketball hoops, trailers, just common nuisance type things. The only authority that the sheriff's office really has is Title 28, and that's basically motor vehicle law. So we can enforce the provisions of the stopping, standing, and parking statutes. And state law, it's not real broad. There's very specific instances that we can act. If somebody puts a basketball hoop up in the street or up against the curb, the sheriff's office isn't getting involved in that. A boat or whatever, as long as a vehicle is legally parked on the roadway, although it might be a nuisance, it might be in violation of your community CC&Rs, the sheriff's office cannot take any action on that. And it's where we could, it's difficult for us to get people out there to take any type of action. Yeah.
So the incident I'm referring to is there were 2 vehicles with all 4 wheels parked on the sidewalk. You could not walk down the sidewalk. The officer would come out and tell them to move it, but he didn't ticket them. And I believe that's a parking violation according to the Arizona State Statute.
Correct. And just if I pulled you over this evening for speeding, I don't have to write you a ticket. I can issue you a warning. That's the discretion of the individual officer. The sheriff's office doesn't bound or have any policies that dictates that our deputies have to take some type of enforcement action. That enforcement action could be as simple as education.
So they moved 1 vehicle and left the other one there blocking, and he would not come out and write a ticket on the second car.
Mm-hmm.
Can I give you an insight into what you're describing is 100% reliance on the officer to come out and take some kind of corrective action. And while that is great, if it can happen, what I'm hearing is your resources are already strained and or limited to begin with. Maybe I can explain a little bit about what your documents currently allow for you to do. Your documents also allow, in addition to anything that the county is permitted to do, you have the ability to have enforcement rights. That means that that homeowner can be fined. They can be given a notice letter, and hopefully that's enough for corrective action to take place. If it's not, then you have what's called a fine policy and a fine schedule. And you can start issuing monetary penalties against the individual for violations that they're engaging in. And that can escalate so long as that infraction continues to be in effect. There's also something that is less utilized, but sometimes does occur, is your documents also provide you with the opportunity to file a lawsuit. A lawsuit is, in this kind of circumstance, would be called an injunction. You are basically going into court, showing your CC&R language that prohibits that very type of activity. You show it to a judge, you prove it through evidence, pictures, witness testimony, whatever the case may be. And at the end, what your purpose is that a judge is going to issue an order that says, homeowner X, you are prohibited from doing this thing that you're doing. And they might give them 15, 30 days to come into compliance. If so, great. If they don't, now the association has the ability potentially to show the court that they have not complied, that they are in contempt of court, and now the judge has the ability to either issue monetary penalties that they can do, which are much more stiff than anything an HOA can do, and or order that person to go to jail, which is a very severe penalty. It's not commonly utilized, but at least it's an option. And again, to get back to the purpose of the purpose of this vote actually has nothing to do with any of the actions that the county can or cannot take. That will still be there regardless of the vote. This is, do you want, and is there a need for you to keep your rights under the CC&Rs that make it to where you have almost 2 layers of protection? One layer with your association, and then secondarily, or in some cases if it's more immediate harm or damage, with the sheriff's office. Does that make sense? I saw a hand up.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
That was a very good point. I've seen that happen, like 3 or 4 cars, they never move. They don't even have the license plate on it. What I'm asking is, there's a question, I may be the last one to know about it, but does also association charging if they do stay with our rights to do this, to enforce them?
I'll let Sean answer that because it has more to do with the dollars and cents of the association.
So if I understand that question correctly, are you guys paying for the enforcement efforts that are going on right now?
Correct.
Yes, that's what Steve Ravish does.
So that we are paying.
You are paying for that, absolutely. And I want to clear something up, just not really clear up, but put out there. Nowadays, I don't know what it was like in the past, but we have an excellent relationship with Pinal County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Myers, he's been out many calls in Johnson Ranch, many. We have a great relationship with them. They have allowed us to tow vehicles from public roadways in Johnson Ranch. Okay, we can provide them with the evidence, we can do that stuff. So if we do a lot of the legwork, not taking up their time, then a lot of times we've had a good working relationship where we can make that happen. If we're out of that enforcement area, if we're out of the pictures that are being taken by his company every night, we don't have that anymore. Now you're into the time frame that Sergeant's talking about with, well, when a deputy can get there. You know, if you look at the traffic the last 3 weeks, there was no way we were going to get a deputy to Johnson Ranch to write a parking ticket. Okay. Sergeant will explain. There's an accident in this immediate area every single day. Okay, and traffic accidents take up a tremendous amount of their time because not very seldom can one deputy go take care of it, right? So if he's talking about they have 4 in the whole area, it's easy to have 4 at one accident. So things like that are going on. We're not getting that help, and it's not their fault. It is truly not their fault. We're just not going to be getting that help. And so we need to keep this option open just so we have some type of enforcement.
What goes on is they Stonegate and Solera, the gated areas, they keep their rights.
That's a great question. So in Stonegate and Solera and Lakeview Gardens, those are private roads. So we maintain that right, okay? To piggyback on that, because
Without a vote.
without a vote, that
No,
doesn't matter.
no vote is needed for private roads.
Right.
This only pertains to public roadways.
So you're not having anything to do with our enforcement, are you?
What's that?
You're not having anything to do.
Oh yeah, we'll still be enforcing parking in Stonegate and Lakeview and then whatever Solera does here in Solera. But here's the other part that's a key to this, is if you live in Johnson Ranch or Solera, because Solera is part of Johnson Ranch, you can still vote. Okay, so don't think that because you live on a private road, you can't help and vote for this. You can still help and vote for this. Okay, just living here gives you the right to all of our voting, all of our elections. So please know, if you live in Stonegate, if you live in Lakeview, if you live in Solera, we can still use that vote. It helped tremendously.
So the quorum, you have a significant number of homes that are outside of the affected vote.
Yes, sir.
But the quorum includes, the calculation for the quorum includes them.
Yes. Yes, okay, so the question was the quorum. And so, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are they controlled so they can vote? You make sure they vote?
That, we're telling everybody we can all along. Yeah, anybody I run into, please vote. And the thing to remember too, that quorum in this vote is going to change. The quorum is 608. Okay, in order for us to meet quorum, we have to have 608 votes. The statute, what we need for the vote is going to be 50% plus one. Okay, so the second we hit 305, we haven't won. It's when we close the voting, we need 50% plus one at that time. Okay, so just so everyone knows, it's not a certain number, that number is going to change. It's 50% plus one.
And it's one vote per household, so if I'm a owner of the house and I have tenants that are renting, who gets the vote?
The owner.
Tenants are actually never allowed to vote.
Well, when you just said, if you live here, you can. They
Yeah.
have-
No, I mean, I'm sorry, I should have said
It's a good clarification.
Yeah.
Then it's actually members.
And I have another question, why would we put up a gate, just a gate for this area, the area that we're talking about, instead of going through the whole vote?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That's actually an option that Charles and I had talked about, is taking over the roads from the county. You're gonna have to understand that's gonna change. Our initial looking at is gonna be about $3 million we have to add to the reserves. Because then we have to maintain all those roads. Okay, so is that an option? That's absolutely an option. Is it a realistic option? That's gonna be real hard to convince 6,071 homes that we need to raise $2 to $3 million every 5 years to do the roads. So very expensive option.
Sure, just piggyback what you said, but if roads are maintained by the county, and we pay our taxes to the county would be giving monies back to accommodate for those roads, correct?
No, that's not how the world works.
You can't just raise the assessment if you take away service.
Yeah.
So you can't raise an assessment $2 or $3 a month, which is not a lot, but the county's taking away a service. That doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem logical.
That, first of all, has nothing to do with the HOA. The question was, people on Zoom can only hear through the mic. The question was, if we lose this, if we were to transfer to the county, would the county then give us money back basically for not providing a service anymore? No, that's not, no, okay, I got 20 years in city government, and I can tell you right now, we don't give money back. It's not gonna happen.
In fact, it'll be the opposite. Your taxes will likely go up to support the new services that they have to pick up. That would be the offset. Rather than money coming your way, it likely would require more taxes on each of your behalf.
All right, we're gonna move on real quick. Got a lot of people here. Okay, these are just a couple of pictures. I just want to run through some of these pictures. These were taken, all these pictures will be in Johnson Ranch. This was not a stage setup. This was nothing. This is just a daytime road. Now, the reason we took this picture and looked at it is this is the potential of what it could be like every day. My friend Larry with the black jacket on can also tell you that there's probably about a 1% chance that a trash truck can get by that road. So if that was the situation on trash day, nobody past there is getting their trash picked up. And it's not Larry's fault. This is just talking about the nuisance. Clearly, there's room to get by it. But that is the potential of what you could look out of your house and look at every day. Okay, now this is a worst case scenario, right? But the reason we wanted this picture here is just to show that truck and trailer on our right, that could be parked there. Okay, as long as the neighbors don't call about it blocking that driveway, that could stay parked there for as long as it takes.
That's dangerous.
I wouldn't think you can pull out of the driveway.
That's very
Yeah,
dangerous.
how do you pull out? If you're parked in the FedEx driveway, how do you get out? Right? And so we already have challenging issues. Our roads are averaging 26 to 27 feet wide. Okay, that is extremely narrow. In the city I came from, our smallest roads had to be 32. We required 26 feet just for an easement to get to a custom home. That's the size of all of our roads. So that's a potential of what could happen. The question behind me from Allison was, what happens with an ambulance? Great question, right? Luckily, there's probably a FedEx driver close by, but that's still the potential of what we run into. All right, we're going to bring up Larry. He's going to discuss this is Larry. He's with Waste Connections. Great partner of ours, and he's going to talk about some of these pictures.
Hi, everybody. Larry Williams, Waste Connections. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with right-of-way disposal, which is the company I've come from. I've been involved with Johnson Ranch since 2013. We were bought out by Waste Connections in 2018. Great company, third largest trash provider in the country. And when they started in 1998. A small community outside of California, outside of Stockton, and grew the company with a small group of people. And one of the first communities they got was a pretty good sized municipality. And they serviced this community, and then the company developed and grew, and they put together the mission and vision, which was based on integrity, customer service, and safety. And this community that they picked up, they ran it for about 2 years, and in 2020, one of our drivers was driving through the community, cars parked on the sides, both sides of the street, and a 7-year-old girl ran out from one of the cars, and the driver hit her, and she died. Very traumatic. The driver, never the same, the family, and it was based on the fact that cars parked on both sides of the street, very, very, the safety standpoint, obviously not good. So when I've been to a lot of these town meetings over the last 4 or 5 months, and I see these people that want to park on the streets, and it's very difficult it's very safety oriented, and it's very challenging for us to service. So this is one case right here where it's a cul-de-sac, and the truck comes down, and the truck is parked in front of the cart. There's no way for us to service it. For the drivers at night, and they'll get out of their truck and leave their truck unoccupied, it's a safety hazard. So we just don't service it. And then the customer calls up and says, hey, I have my cart out. How come it didn't get serviced? So all of our trucks have cameras on them. They have seven cameras, and they record service 360 degrees. And so we're able to pull this information and send it to the homeowner and give them, this is what happened. And they said, well, can you come back? And you guys pretty much know the answer on that. This is another case of cart on the other side of the car. And there's times where the drivers will get out and actually move it, but this is where sometimes you don't even see it. You just drive by. Now there was a picture earlier. I just want to kind of show you guys real quick. So this was a situation in Santan Heights where our driver come around a corner, very, 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 very long block. And he's doing service, gets about halfway down, and he runs into a situation like this, except for the cars, were not cars. There was an RV trailer on one side and a toy hauler on the other side. And they couldn't get past it. He got out of his truck, started knocking on doors, nobody answered the doors. So he had to take his truck almost a city block and back it up all the way down the street. And the safety on that is ridiculous, where you can't see behind you very well. You got cars that are pulling out. You got cars that are coming up, they're honking the horn, like, why are you backing up? And it's because of situations just like this. So keep that in mind when you guys are thinking about voting on this, is that safety is number one. And I mean, it can happen to anybody. And number two is the safety of our drivers. You know, we want to make sure that they get home safe after they get done their service. And last, we want to be able to collect every trash can that's placed out. So that's our job. So that's my spiel.
Any questions for Larry before he sits down?
I have a question for Larry. Say this doesn't go through and everybody's parked all over the streets, I'm imagining our rates are also gonna go up because it's gonna be a nuisance. So.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a valid point. Will our rates go up too because it's harder for us to navigate through the community? You know, it's something that we take in consideration. If we're spending an hour here longer than what we normally do, especially if there's increased traffic that's parked on the streets, it's definitely something that we take into account. So, yeah, good point.
I have a question. And I could be misunderstanding some things, but during the day, is there a parking regulation during the day? I thought this had to do with 24-hour parking.
That's a great question. Let me clarify why we have the regulation that we have. Okay, if you look at the hours of our enforcement, it's from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So some people ask us, well, why do you do that? That's when the least amount of people are on the road, the least amount of people are parked. Why do you take that time to enforce it? We're not saying, we don't even believe that it's within our right to say, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that on the public roadways. The reason for this ordinance is so people don't store stuff in the street. Okay, that's the entire reason. If you give one of these individuals, okay, well, that was a perfect example. That trailer. Okay, if that's there at 1 o'clock in the morning, if that's there at midnight, okay, they can write the violation. Those continue to climb. For any of you in here who are habitual parking people, you know how fast they climb. With that situation, we couldn't do anything about it. Right now, that's why we do it from 1 to 5. Those are the people who are storing vehicles there. Those are the ones that are going to be there for 24 hours, 48 hours, things of that nature. It's not a matter of us trying to take over the county's job of enforcing the public roadways. We're not equipped to that, trained for that, none of that. We're here to make sure things don't stay in the road. So by not allowing it, now we don't have the boats, now we don't have the campers, we don't have the broke down vehicles, we don't have those kinds of things because it's not allowed to be stored there.
I did have a question about the scenario that this lady back here about vehicles parked on the sidewalk and that sort of thing. And as the attorney pointed out, our homeowner association has steps to take. What I'm wondering, and I actually hesitated to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If that person that is parked on the sidewalk, let's say they move it before any, they got the little thing that the warning or whatever, and they move it for a day. And then they park it back, does that clock start over?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
And I didn't want to bring that up because I don't want to teach anybody, but yes.
Maybe. I'm going to change it to a maybe.
Right.
Because if it's a continuing non-compliance violation, then it's still a continuous non-compliant violation. Moving it for a minute or for an hour or for some minimal amount of time, I'm not, as the attorney, I'm not
We're talking about him.
losing the rights to potentially pursue that. For him, that might be a different story.
Right.
Okay, now I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
I got a ticket for a car that I didn't even own. It was the neighbor's. So I had to call you and let you know.
Yep.
Do you take that off my record?
100%.
I said, it was not my car.
Yeah, we do that every single day.
Pardon?
There's not a day goes by that we don't take off.
Yeah,
Because it's all done by GPS, sometimes they're wrong.
I knew.
Normally, the person who got the violation will let us know where the car belongs, and we assign it to the right house.
Yeah, I don't.
For the sake of, I'm so sorry, for the sake of the people on Zoom who can't hear the questions, I'm just gonna give everybody a microphone.
Yeah, I was.
I'm just curious, in Arizona itself, we have a lot of landscapers that come in, and I've noticed that I'm from the East Coast, and the East Coast, you can't park 25 feet within an intersection, whether it's a residential area or not. But I find these huge trucks and trailers parked right at the corner, and if I'm coming out of my street, I can't see. There could be a car coming down and they could hit me. Is that a law in Arizona, or?
I passed that off.
So there is obstructing a public thoroughfare. There would have to be an undue traffic hazard. Whether or not it's a citable offense, I mean, just driving around neighborhoods and stuff, if I see something unsafe, like I was talking about before, I prefer to educate people. I don't like getting tickets. I assume most other people don't like getting tickets. Our sheriff thankfully gives us the discretion, each individual deputy, to carry out their business how they see fit. And I know most of the guys on my squad, it's just, hey, can you move your truck? People, as far as how many feet you can park from an intersection, I think that's more poised towards intersections where there's stop signs. And I think there's a specific statute that gives a specific distance as it relates to stop signs. But yeah, 20 feet sounds about right. But again, somebody could be not parked by a stop sign and still be creating a traffic hazard where, it's making it difficult for, garbage trucks to turn or other vehicles to just, have a clear line of sight, if you will.
Would I be out of control if I saw the guy and said, can you please back up your truck some?
No.
So I can see?
And quite frankly, that's the majority. I mean, a lot of the calls we go on, if people would just communicate with one another, a lot of times people seem to just pick up the phone and call the sheriff's office, and by the time we get there, they're already gone. So, the call sits for 30, 40 minutes. We finally get a deputy assigned to it. By the time they get there, they're gone. But there's nothing wrong with dialogue, for sure.
In the back in the red?
Can you tell me what day the vote is gonna open and what is the wording gonna be on it?
Yes, I can tell you the day. The day will start on the 24th of February. 25th of February is when voting begins. So 12:01 a.m. It will begin, and it closes at the beginning of our annual meeting. Once we're out at the annual meeting, which is March 25th, so the vote will stay open for exactly a month, then we will close the vote, and that's for the board as well as the roadway. We will close the votes. We have a nominating committee that will be there to accept any write-in ballots that were dropped off at the meeting and then bounce them off and compare them to the internet votes, and they do their little system. They do that. And then it's official. So it's not official until the annual meeting on March 25th, about 6:35 to 6:45 in the evening. And again, it starts on the 25th.
So you're only accepting signatures now, or what? Votes or not?
No, we cannot accept anything until February 25th.
What will the wording on that be?
The wording on it will be, he wrote it. Oh, here we go.
It's kind of longer, but essentially it says, if a majority of a quorum of votes in the association votes yes, then the association will continue with the right to regulate the public roadways within the association. Otherwise, the association will lose the right to regulate the public roadways. If this occurs, the members and the residents will need to contact the city or in this case, county, for issues on the public streets such as parking illegal vehicles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have a question because we've been talking a lot about parking. There's a lot more that our compliance people do that don't just concern parking that is going to be affected by this. Bulk trash pickup, right now you can put it out, the day before, whatever it is. I could put it out on the first of the month and it's not coming to the end of the month, is that correct? So I can leave mattresses and all my garbage out in front of my house, right?
Depending on your particular front yard and where it goes, there is absolutely the potential for that. You could put it on the sidewalk, put it on the curb, things like that. And again, is that right? Or is there something that the sheriff's department could do? Probably, absolutely. That's not what we pay them for. We don't pay them around to go ticket mattresses. So this is something we've got to keep in house. But yes, you could potentially see a pile of stuff on the curb for 3 weeks at a time before bulk trash comes. And then the cool part about that is there'll be a car parked in front of it, and then Larry's guy can't pick up the bulk trash, so then it'll sit there for another 4 weeks.
And also, I mean, you're talking landscape stuff can be kept there, like somebody drops off their rock and they don't get it within a couple of days. All of that stuff to keep. Yeah, everything. So those are things we have to think about as well. It's not just parking, it's so much bigger. And one thing Kim wanted to make sure everybody was aware of, the information that Sean shared about the meeting when the vote opens and all of that, johnsonranch.com, there's a page on our website that'll explain that and go over that information.
These are our current provisions on what we can enforce when it comes to public roadways. We can enforce nuisances and construction activities. Okay, that could be roll-offs, that could be debris, sawhorses, whatever. Trash containers and collection. Okay, I think everyone in here, hopefully you know, Tuesday at noon is when you're allowed to put them out. They have to be gone by Thursday at noon. Trucks, trailers, campers, and boats. And then the best one is, it's in parentheses, motor vehicles. Motor vehicles that's a very broad, yes, the sergeant over here, that's a very broad term, which is good. And then parking. So we have a lot of different things that'll be impacted. We'll lose all of that without this yes vote.
What about when people move out and just abandon the homes and leave all over the yard, all over the front yard?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
That's enforced.
Well, somebody still owns that home. Here's the great part about that. It's a good question, but we got to stick to the roadways. But somebody still owns that home. So we will still violate whoever's the current owner of that home.
That stuff stays there like a month.
People get those violations very often.
Okay, we have a question back here.
Okay, so you said motor vehicles. So if a trailer is parked on the street, it doesn't have a motor. So how is that classified as a motor vehicle?
Does it have a license plate?
Yeah, it's considered a motor vehicle.
Okay, so when they drop those big containers that aren't on trailers, they don't have a license plate, we call you?
Nope, that's the construction part.
That's where your documents are more expansive and provide more than the code does through the county. So.
Well, we ran that guy off. He doesn't live there anymore. But one thing I want to just say this on behalf of the community. We have a lot of voter apathy in our area. If everyone in here takes the responsibility to encourage your neighbors to vote, please do so. We don't want to lose this for.
Exactly.
As a follow-up to that, how can we help that apathy? Can we take votes to people? Can we get petitions signed that says this person voted in this way? Because apathy, it's going to happen.
Yeah, here's the thing. If we look at even this room right here, I haven't counted how many people, but let's just say we have 60 people in here. If those 60 people tell the 2 people on each side of them, okay, well, that spreads, okay? Rumors, okay? It's a rumor, so spread a good rumor. Spread a true rumor. Tell people, hey, we need this vote or else, right? Because especially if you've been on social media at all, okay, the news about Elon Musk and all this other stuff, it spreads like wildfire. I know more about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce than I ever thought I wanted to, right? All those rumors spread like wildfire. So take your part, spread the rumor, talk to everybody you know about it.
Just, could you maybe explain for everyone so they understand the numbers again, the quorum? So it's my understanding that we have 6,000 houses. We need 10% of that, which is 600 votes. We need half of that, which is 300 plus one.
Close. Yeah, okay, so we have 6,071, so we need 608 votes. Okay, now if the voting stopped right there, if nobody else voted, once we hit 608, okay, then we would need 305. Okay, however, every time someone votes, of course, that number of that 50% goes up. It's 50% of the votes, not 50% of the initial quorum. Okay, it's 50% of the established quorum at the end. So whatever that 50% plus one vote is what we need to pass at the end.
Can I just add? So the quorum is basically the key that opens the door so you can have a valid meeting and a valid vote. That's your 608 that you need to vote. You have to have that, otherwise the meeting doesn't take place. And then, exactly as you said, any number above that, if you get 1,000 votes, then you need 501. That's your 50% plus one.
But if we don't even get 10% to show up,
Then this is gone, which is where the apathy comes in, which is, no, you can't go door to door and circulate a petition for people to sign because people are gonna get their individual ballots. But you can absolutely talk to your neighbors. You can absolutely use your own proper networking within the community to say, hey, I don't know if you knew about this or if you were planning to vote or not. Let me tell you what I know about it. And if you think that this is important, which I think it is, and I don't live here, then you can share that with them and hopefully that will spur the desire for them to participate.
And where are you gonna have this, where, on February the 25th?
On March 25th, right here at 6 p.m. is our annual meeting.
To have 600
If everybody can
Yeah,
raise their hands, I've got a lot of questions and I'm trying to get back to the people in order.
how often do you notified of the vote? Because I did tell my two neighbors, and my two neighbors knew nothing about what I was talking about.
All we can do is what we can do. So we have email addresses. Kim is constantly adding, this is Kim, by the way, she's our lifestyle and communications specialist, manager. She's constantly adding to that. Every time somebody buys a home, we add to it. It goes in our system. It's called VMS system. As soon as we have that information, every Wednesday in the e-blast, if you currently are not subscribing to our e-blast because you get annoyed by whatever you have, please resubscribe and then you'll start getting our emails. That's when it has all that information. You can also go to johnsonranch.com, super easy website to look at. We have links on there to all this information. We're gonna have this meeting sometime tomorrow, hopefully by tomorrow afternoon. There'll be a link to this meeting set up. So you'll be even tell your neighbors, hey, they recorded the meeting, check it out on johnsonranch.com at your leisure. Okay, we want this out there. We try to get it out as much as we can. We need everybody's help.
One of the things that's happening when we're doing this is that it's going at the same time as the election for the board members. And so if you're thinking, oh, we're not gonna make quorum, I'm not so concerned about not making quorum. What I'm concerned about is what people will actually vote for when they vote. So when they're out there voting for the board member and they say, oh, okay, how about this thing in regards to the parking? And do they understand that? So that's my fear more, is that they won't know what they're voting for. And so that's why we need to make sure we get the word out. I think we'll need quorum, but it's making sure people know.
Here at Johnson Ranch, we have no issue making quorum. We normally average right around 12 to 1,300 votes. So we get the votes. We're gonna be okay with the votes. It's just a matter of getting the right votes for this one. The board election, we have no concerns about. We're going to get those 12 or 1,300 votes. But we need the 50 plus one. That's why we're not even talking about the board stuff tonight. This is all about getting that vote.
Can I make a suggestion? Board members should not and cannot use any of the social media. So if you see someone that now you know how this vote's going to be and what it represents, and if you see someone that is confused or doesn't have the right information, it would be great if you could just gently correct them and say, I was at the meeting, go to johnsonranch.com or something to that effect. Because I think a lot of people wonder why board members are never on, like, social media, and that's why.
Yeah, we have our
Can't
own.
correct anyone.
We have our own Facebook page of Johnson Ranch, the actual Johnson Ranch one. And Kim is adamant, she's on there, she's putting that information on there. The other pages are not ours, and we don't comment on them. On the Johnson Ranch page, every once in a while, I might say a word or two, and then I get yelled at by Kim in the morning. But normally it's Kim, and the board members are forbidden, I guess you could say, even though we don't tell them what to do. But to keep themselves out of trouble, they don't say anything.
Over the course of the next month, you will see it in all of our e-news, every weekly e-news. We will put it on social media. It will remain on, it's at the very top menu of our homepage on our website. It says Public Roadways Regulation at the top. We'll also have a link there for our annual meeting and all the details for the annual meeting as well. I have another question over here.
I just wondered if there would be a pro and con write-up anywhere that we could see, because I'd like to see the con opinion too.
Yeah, well, no. It's gonna be all pro, I'm sorry, but we're not, there's no interest in losing this vote. So we're going to talk about how do we get the yes vote. And I understand, I have 6 registered vehicles to me. I don't have room for them. Okay, so my mother-in-law has one in her garage. My parents have one in their garage, and then I have mine here. So I get that people run out of, I don't get my insurance from you, I get that people don't have room, especially when kids get older. I have a child now, and I get all that. We still have to keep our neighborhood safe, and we have to keep our property values up.
This is for Charles. I didn't know what the word quorum meant before tonight, so if you can explain that maybe when you send this out, because some people, I assume I'm not the only one, and some people say, I don't know what quorum.
No, that's a really good question, and it's legal nomenclature that applies to our world, but in normal discussion, it doesn't really carry a lot of meaning. And so you're right. Quorum is that threshold that you have to meet in order to have a valid meeting. Different associations have different requirements for what constitutes quorum. And in Johnson Ranch, it's 10% of your membership. And so that was the analysis that went through.
But if you could put that in the document, that's what I'm saying.
An explanation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I'm gonna get Steve. He has a long drive to get to after this, so we can do questions all night. Let me get Steve, talk to you guys real quick. This is Steve Ravish. He owns Oversii. By far the premier HOA, community association, security / parking. Here we use the word parking. This is Steve Ravish.
Thank you very much. I am the owner and operator, so I'm not a salesperson or account manager. This is very important to me to be here. And so first I want to, I guess, thank you for the opportunity to service your community. We started in, July of 2023, right around that time. So just to be clear, we are a security agency, so I do have a license with DPS in the state of Arizona to conduct 3 services: off-duty, which we'll never do; armed, we'll never do; security, unarmed security, which is what we do. Okay, so, and also to clarify, we are definitely not law enforcement. Huge difference. We are not the management company. We do not send out the courtesy letters and fines and so forth. We are the ones, in fact, in odd hours, mostly at night, that are generating literally thousands of citations or violations in this case to do mainly 2 things as we see it. And that is obviously the security aspect, but also the behavior. So right now, as of yesterday, we serviced 296 HOAs in Phoenix Metro as well as Tucson. We are cranking out about just over 2,800 violations on average a night. And that's not security related, that's specific to parking. Furthermore, let's say that it matters, but we're just over 5,100 miles each night that our patrol vehicles are out there. So again, not law enforcement, we're trying to take the ease off of them and what they really need to do and to prioritize. So you're right, we are the ones, again, we are conducting unarmed security. So we are here X amount of time per night, and there is a block of 4 hours that we are actually doing parking enforcement. So I know that none of you have received these flyers, but if you do, that is us. And so right now, that information, we document it. It does go to the management company, and they take it from there. A couple specific points. That's not where, that's not my vehicle. Sean had mentioned that our data, which is proprietary, it's a proprietary software that I've created specific to HOA, that whenever we take a picture from the cell phone, it has GPS coordinates, and so we know exactly where that was taken. Now, there's two addresses, the vehicle address and the violated address. So unfortunately, we don't have laptops in our computer or guards, which they would not have the ability to run plates. We can as a company, but not as employees. So we can't just run the plate there, sight on seat, right? Boots on the ground, so to say. So, but we can do that on the back end. So we do offer, we already beat that to the punch. In terms of the attractiveness to be awarded this contract, we offered free plate runs. It does cost us, but we knew that that's an issue. Again, we service a lot of communities. I think the closest ones are going to be Seville is a big one. And then I'd say Pecan Creek North and South, Bridget at Gilbert. That's a really big one. And so we did start here. I think most of the problems specific are near the pool areas. Was it Star Pass and then Indigo or something? The kids at, non-parking related, the kids at the, doing all the miscellaneous things at the parks and stuff, a lot of that has cleaned up. So we've seen significant progress. And for us to lose, again, the rights to enforce, I would always say, like, is the grass really that green on the other side? So it's, again, safety. We see it as behavior. She pointed out, well, it's going to lead to other things. One thing leads to another. I know enforcement says that, so it may start here. And in fact, since we are generating all of this data, we actually look up Amber Alerts. And when there's a vehicle, a plate, we've seen multiple plates, and we send to see that we documented this plate that has a kid in it, or it's registered to someone that's perhaps on a murder charge, that whatever it may be, we actually let them know because we document that plate here. Doesn't mean that's where it's at, but it gives them information. So that's a pretty severe thing. But I can talk all day long about we actually see sight unseen. But
tell your story you told me the other day about the community that was going to step away from it. Okay, I won't name the HOA, but you got about 1,900 homes. It's in Chandler, mostly on the west part. But we've been there for years. Typically, whenever we start enforcement, we see a noticeable positive change within 90 days. I don't care how bad it is. Always a positive change, right? Here, they attempted for the vote. This was early, that was August of last year. We got a termination letter in September saying they didn't obtain, the quorum of the membership and so forth in favor. So now we are back there, 3 months after that termination, the 30-day termination. Unfortunately, they've seen how quickly the behavior has, I guess, rescinded or, it's regressed, so to say. And it is absolutely awful. They've seen semi-trucks, they have cars parked all over the place, they have people running businesses. And in fact, we've heard that realtors actually won't, promote houses there. So now we get onto the price item because they don't want to take, and this is like during the day, right? That's when you show homes, that they know that their client doesn't want this type of behavior. Can you imagine what it's like at night? So police as well, they know that the streets that are enforced, so whenever there is a response, they are quicker to go through, or at least have more confidence to drive through the streets instead of slaloming and going through the meadows of trying to get to the scene. There was a story up in Estancia. I know it's way opposite spectrum, but we do in fact service them. Large community way up in Northwest Peoria. There was a kid that died. This must have been a couple years ago, but this was during the day. Cars parked everywhere. One of the brothers was doing a social media video or whatever it may be. And unfortunately, the 4-year-old got out. And again, cars parked everywhere. There was just a car going the speed limit, topped the kid and passed away. So we never like to see that, but it was absolutely terrible. So,
does anybody have any questions specific for Steve?
I won't say mine's a question, but mine's a comment. I think Johnson Ranch wants to be known as a HOA where we enforce the rules and compliance. Otherwise, we attract people that we don't want in the HOA. So if we just say free parking, that's another justification for people who don't want to follow the rules to move into our neighborhoods. We want to be known as a neighborhood that enforces and is compliance heavy so that people will go to other neighborhoods rather than to our neighborhood.
Any other questions for Steve? Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Sean, I had some more questions. Do you have more to say? You want me to?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll move into the Q&A. I think.
So one thing I wanted to point out, in 8 days, 3 kids in Johnson Ranch were injured. One's still fighting for his life. We don't have this parking problem where these kids were hit. But just imagine if we do. If we allow on-street parking, how many more children are going to get hit? Aside from that, as hard as a few of us worked to oppose this apartment complex over here, once those multi-residential buildings go in, if they don't have parking, are they going to be on Johnson Ranch Boulevard? Are they going to be on your streets in front of your houses and your driveways? I'm really concerned about it because they're not going to have adequate parking. And if they're going to have adequate parking, that means they're going to build a 3 or 4 story apartment building. So there's just a few things for you to mull over.
Did somebody else have their hands up? I think do you still?
I have a question about daytime parking. I don't know much about city ordinances or anything, but is there a way we can enforce parking on only one side of the street? And I ask this because when I have company, I like to entertain and I want my friends to come over. Well, that might be 10 cars. My driveway only handles 2. So what do we do about that?
That's a great question. It's a very tough question. Yeah, you can do parking passes. Okay, you can absolutely get on johnsonranch.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you have a parking pass down there where we issue a variance. That, when you fill that out, that goes straight to his company, not us. And then they notify us that they got this variance. You get 15 of them every 60 days, I believe. I could be wrong on that, it might be 90, but I think it's 60. You get 15 of those passes every 60 days. You can do that. Other than that, during the day, you're absolutely allowed to park in the street. Okay, you can. It just has to be gone from 1 till 5. So if you're having people over, we see it a lot, especially days like Sunday with Super Bowl. Okay, people have parties. I went to one. There's a lot of cars in the street, golf carts, everything. And you're allowed to do that.
So a parking pass, is that for overnight?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
That clears you from 1 to 5. So if you had family come into town and you only have the 2 spaces, right? Then you just get on there, you do a parking pass, you put in the license plate of the vehicle that you want the pass for. Again, it goes to Steve, he sends it to us. You're good.
That's only for a motor vehicle, I mean, it's not for like a trailer or anything.
Trailers are allowed to be there for 24 hours, loading and unloading. Right. So you can show up, it's allowed to be there for 24 hours while you load it, get ready. And then it's allowed to be there once you get back from your trip for another 24 hours to unload. Yes, Deb.
And I think, and I don't know if maybe Jeannie or somebody else can comment on this, maybe the sheriff's office can, but I think this parking law is actually, I want to say, I'm using the wrong word here, but it's forcing the county to kind of deal with the zoning because we're unincorporated, so we don't have a city that says we're allowed to do this or that. It's the county, and I don't think they've really dealt with parking until this law is coming into effect. So I believe somebody from the county was working on rezoning parking laws and everything like that. If I recall, do you remember they would do that?
Let me just fix some of the terminology.
Yeah,
it's not zoning.
Help me out there.
Yeah, it's not zoning. So right now they have some proposed ordinances that Pinal County is putting out, and they're fantastic. Okay, it's no semi trucks in residential areas 24 hours a day. Certain rules on boats and motorhomes as far as how long they're going to be there. What they're doing, and it's certainly not the sergeant's fault. I wish it was done 20 years ago, but it's kind of typical of counties, right? Counties have different structures of ordinances than the cities do. But yeah, they do have that proposed, and we're really hoping it passes because that gives more teeth for us too. When somebody parks, we see it all the time in Johnson Ranch. You're going to have, we call them common walls, So you have a house on an intersection and they have their side yard runs down the street that intersection tees at. So people will park there because it's not gonna trigger an address for Steve. Well, parking there now can become, with this new ordinance, if it gets passed and if they adopt this ordinance, now we can get them. So then I can call Sergeant Myers and I can say, hey, it's been here for 3 days, here's the pictures, blah, 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 blah. Basically, then what they do is they just give us the authorization to tow it. If it's up on the curb, then we can consider a common area and then we can have it towed without their authorization. But if it's in the road, we call them and we have them come do it. Any other questions?
Are they allowed to block the mailboxes?
That is a fantastic question. I'm glad you said that because it doesn't come up tonight. Yes, I don't think there's any law in the world against blocking mailbox. However, we do have mail carriers that if there's a car parked in front of the mailbox, will not drop that mail off. So we can call Sergeant Myers as much as we want about that truck parked in front of the mailbox and that they're not getting mail. There's nothing he can do, even if he wants to. No law against it, okay? There's nothing he can do about that. But we can if it's something that they're keeping there, if they're storing there.
We haven't heard from Rural Metro.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to them.
I can picture the fire hoses going through car windows.
So I'm gonna bring up Rural Metro real quick just to answer any questions you guys have. He likes to hide in the back, so he has to come up front. I will say, I'm gonna preface this, it's probably the same with Pinal County. They're not taking sides on this, but he's here to answer any questions that anybody here has.
Thanks so much. My name is Chief Greer. I work out at the Copper Basin office. I've been working this beat for about 20 years, so I'm very familiar with all the neighborhoods and whatnot, and a lot of the concerns. Excuse me?
Can't hear you.
I've been working the beat for about 20 years, so I'm very familiar with your neighborhoods. And like the gentleman from Waste Connection said, we do have a lot of those similar problems where the congestion does create problems for us. Typically with a siren and an air horn, those problems are relieved rather quickly. Or then I got guys who will just hop out of the truck and start humping their equipment to whatever house we need to go to. It does create a response time problem. And we all know that if we've got a loved one that's struggling, we don't want to be waiting around because of a parking problem. Is there any questions? I know there was a funny comment about parking in front of fire hydrants. I've got enough tools and equipment to get through a car if I need to. So it's usually not an issue, it just takes a little bit of time. The sheriff's office is famous for parking right in front of the fire hydrant, by the way.
I just have a quick question. Since the fires in California, and since we did live here when George Johnson lived here, or was in charge kind of, do our fire hydrants have water in them?
Yes, they do.
Because they didn't used to.
No, they've always had water in them. There may be one or two in certain neighborhoods that are out of service for repairs. And there was some construction and reconnection issues with Mr. Johnson. However, EPCOR's done a fantabulous job of fixing most of that system. So EPCOR manages it. It's a private water company. So if there is a specific issue, you just give them a ring and they'll hop on over and take care of whatever the fire hydrant problem is. And they contact us weekly, monthly about hydrants that are out of service, so we're aware of them. Luckily, the codes for fire hydrants in residential neighborhoods is one about every 500 feet, so we should be good.
Where I used to live, they used to test them just to make sure that the water pressure was there. I know Johnson had trouble with the water pressure, not testing. I've been here 15 years, about 16 years. I've never seen anybody test those fire hydrants.
Like I was saying earlier, EPCOR is a private water company, so I can't go and use their equipment and test their equipment. I know they do their own testing. I don't know what exactly it is. There would have to be a rep from EPCOR here to answer that question. We have done some testing in the past. It's usually right around 5 or 10 years. We'll go through and turn certain hydrants in certain neighborhoods and make sure that everything's working or the hydrants aren't painted shut and so forth. Anything else? Awesome.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for these folks before we call it? Go through the pictures. This right here is bulk trash too. That's what happens if you do bulk trash and then your neighbor parks in front. For more information, johnsonranch.com. You can do /public-roadways-regulation, or you can just go to johnsonranch.com and find the link on top. Please do it, even if you just want to look for yourself when you're done, refresh your memory. Like I said, the best thing we can do is start the proper rumor mill and let everybody know how important this is. I really think that this is going to be an easy vote of let's just say for every 10 phone calls that come in about parking, 8.5 of them are people that are mad that someone's parked in front of their house, that their neighbor keeps parking in the street. What are you guys doing about it? All these kinds of things. 1.5 of those are, I have 5 cars in a 2-car garage that's full of boxes, and so we have no place to park. Right. So I really think we're going to do well with this, but we need to make sure. We need to make it a landslide.
Sean, just lastly, make sure, Kim, that yes is the right vote, not no.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you do that, but I know you will figure it out.
Yeah, please understand, like I said earlier, the law is already the law. You are not voting for that law. Okay, the legislature already messed up and voted that one in. So now it's our job to do the right thing and vote for our right. So the yes vote gives us the right to run our own community when it comes to public roadways.
Those 2 options are outlined on that webpage. And if anybody reads the webpage and something seems unclear, please reach out. It's kim@johnsonranch.com so that I can work with Sean to clarify language a little bit better for you guys. But that is in there as what a yes vote is and what a no vote is.
And when you get your actual ballot explains it. Okay, the great thing about having Charles as our attorney for the association, his firm wrote the ballot exactly how it needs to be to cover all the legal stuff. And it says that, yes, and then it goes into detail about maintain the right to enforce public roadways. No, we lose the right. So that's actually on the ballot. It's not just a yes, no, check this box, like you're in 5th grade trying to get a girlfriend. It's nothing like that. It's very in-depth.
Sean, can you just explain the voting process? Like everybody's gonna get an email and how that's gonna work?
Yes, so the question was, well, I think everyone should have a microphone. Everyone's gonna get an email. You're gonna get your ballot in the email. It's gonna come from Vote HOA Now, and you're gonna get that ballot. You can also vote on paper at the office. You can come by. You can get a paper ballot. We have a secure drop box. We have certain requirements we have to follow by law. Charles checks out our requirements. Then we also have a nominating committee of 3 people to make sure we follow those requirements. We have the ballot box that goes into that. That ballot box doesn't get counted or opened until the night of the annual meeting. So you can do it either way. You can come to the office, do a paper ballot. I'm a paper ballot person. I still vote in person. I still do all that. So that's the way I would do it. You can do whatever you want. The internet one is very, very good. We have no problems with it. We had a little snafu last year, but it was just actually over a computer glitch. But it didn't change the voting at all. But anyways, please go in. You're going to make sure that you're subscribed to Johnson Ranch emails. That's extremely important. If we annoyed you or we fined you or we did something like that and you got mad at us and you unsubscribed, please resubscribe so that you get that. One other thing I want to clear up, we kind of touched on it earlier, but we didn't go into detail. It's 1 vote per property. Okay, please remember that. So if you're in a roommate situation, okay, if you got myself and Steve, we live in the same house with roommates. He wants to park wherever the heck he wants. I don't want anybody to.
Who's the homeowner in this situation?
Both of us.
Oh.
Okay? Okay, well, that's up to us to figure it out because there's only 1 vote. Okay, we don't both get a vote on that. There's only 1 vote. Okay? Do not try to vote twice. They'll kick your votes out. So you get your 1 vote. Okay, so talk it over with your roommate, with your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, kid, whoever you live with. Make sure you know you only get that 1 vote. The technology with Vote HOA Now bounces that off of it. Everything goes by the email attached to the address. You only get that 1 vote. Please only vote 1 time.
Sean, can we clarify?
Yeah.
When he's talking about we get to vote, it's whoever is the record owner. So who's on your deed, that's the member that gets to vote. So if you and a friend own the property together, that's what he's talking about. Only 1 vote between the 2 of you. If it's married persons, then it's fine, 1 vote for that household. But it's gonna be based on the deed, so a tenant, a renter, a friend who's just staying there forever and won't leave, they don't get to vote. Their membership does not have anything to do, they do not have a membership in Johnson Ranch.
What about all those people like BlackRock and all those that own homes? Do they get to vote?
Yes.
Every member.
For the email, will you get a confirmation back that your vote's been counted?
Yes.
Received.
Received, yes, yes.
Voted.
I think you may have inadvertently said this, but you said if we vote twice, like say I vote online, I don't know that he's voting at your office. You said they would get kicked out, like if you like I took that to mean they could both be.
Potentially, they could both be kicked out.
Whoa,
Yes.
so you don't want to twice.
Let me see what the chat says real quick. Maybe we
So, Sean, if I can-
Yeah, please.
I have a question for you. So they are asking about workload for compliance and Oversii, and explaining that our compliance team does more than just parking, and Oversii does more than just parking violations as well. So can you kind of reiterate?
Okay, so the question was the workload for compliance and Oversii, and so I can kind of see where this question's coming from. Will we save money if we get rid of this? The answer is no. Okay, our compliance people, because of the system we have set up with Steve's company, when we get in, we get a giant queue. It has a picture, it has everything. It's all automated. We click boxes, we look at it, we go through, we send them out. Our staff, probably on average, takes about an hour to send out all of the night's notices or violations, whichever it may be. So no, you're not gonna save money on compliance, because the only thing that would do is save us an hour where now we can start looking at more view lots. We can start doing more landscaping, everything else. So no, it would just change our focus. And as far as his company, that's gonna be a board decision. My recommendation is gonna be to keep them. They do a lot with our parks. Okay, we have 26 parks in Johnson Ranch. We have 19 play structures. Anybody who's looked at a wall in Johnson Ranch knows we have people that like to write stuff on them. They catch a lot of that stuff. They run the kids out of the parks. They run the kids off the basketball courts in the middle of the night at Indigo. They still have a job to do. Again, they're here for 10 hours a night and they only do 4 hours of parking. So they're still needed. So no, you're not gonna save money by voting no. Any other questions? One more in the back. 1 second, let me get the mic because we're.
Just a quick question on overnight parking issues. We've got a great neighborhood where people frequently do not violate, but we have the occasional, it may be a new resident or something, where there's a car or a vehicle sits there for a week, full time, overnight and everything. How do we know to not bother you to complain if they're permitted for a reason or not? Do you have a system where they place a placard in the window so we know not to bother you?
No, what I would always suggest is that we are in the customer service industry and you're the customer, please call us. That's the easiest way to do it. And please understand, we are only allowed to issue a violation, the same violation every 15 days. So when Steve's crew goes through and they do a neighborhood, okay, let's just take Rose Walk, they do Rose Walk. They'll drive through that neighborhood, but they're not going to be there for parking for another 15 days. Now they do have some checks and balances. If that particular guard knows, hey, that car wasn't here last time, then he can still ding it. But it's difficult, okay, because he now for that 4-hour time frame, he has a different zone he has to go get. So it's difficult. And so a lot of things, it's kind of like a little sprinkler leak. Okay, sometimes it's hard for us to see that. If you see it, let us know, please. No resident calling our office has ever been a pain. And that's not even Tom, okay? And I've talked to 20 of you in this room before, and you guys all know, a lot of you have been in my office. You're never gonna be a pain if you call our office. What stinks is when people don't call our office and they get mad and they want something fixed. Well, if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. So please call our office, please.
I have a question. Is that-
Hold on, wait for the microphone. I'm on my golf cart.
When we use the microphone, everybody on Zoom can hear better.
This is not really a question about parking. It's about blocking the sidewalks. And I understand our driveways aren't long enough for a lot of these big vehicles. But I'm concerned for safety for elderly people who might be in a scooter, a wheelchair, a walker, the kids that have to walk around the vehicles out into the street might be a reason they're getting hit as well. Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, please let us know where it is. Odds are they're already getting tickets, but there's no hurt in letting us know. There's actually no hurt in letting us know. Many of you in this room have probably called us, you've talked to myself or Rebecca, and somebody has said, hey, you guys aren't doing anything about this. Well, we can't tell you what we've done to that person, right? And just like you wouldn't want us to tell you about your stuff, but we absolutely have, okay? And 90% of them, they have a huge balance of fines. So please, just because people don't follow rules, and Sergeant will tell you, having rules doesn't mean people are gonna follow, okay? Yeah, doesn't.
Are people allowed to park in their front yard?
No.
In the gravel?
No, you cannot park on the ground, day or night.
So a Zoom question is just how open is the board to finding a solution to insufficient parking in most lots? Need 3 abreast.
What was the last part of that?
Okay, so the question was, how open is the board to increasing parking on the lots so that we can get 3 abreast? The board has already decided on this. A few months ago, they approved Patty and her team to widen our driveway extensions. Used to be 2 feet or the edge of the pop out on the garage, okay? They've let us go further than that, and they've given our DRC the right to look at each particular lot as an individual. So if you have a lot that'll hold a 6-foot or an 8-foot extension, then they have the authority now to approve that, where they didn't have that before. So the board has already looked into that. We're even open to talking about it some more. We have a couple of houses with second driveways that I think could work. Currently don't fit our standards, so we'll probably bring some more stuff to the board to try to help this. So we absolutely, the board has been great about trying to figure out, and we have several board members here, by the way, but they've been great about trying to figure out options for parking. Okay, they've been, we want to hear them, and if you have ideas, we'll let you know if it's something that's feasible. But right now, what we do is it's a case-by-case basis based on your yards. If you live in Lakeview, probably not a real good chance you're gonna get a huge extension because those are the world's smallest front yards, okay? But there are certain neighborhoods that absolutely there's the room for it and the aesthetics would still look good. And so we have the authority now to do that because of our work.
Is it true that, or I just heard this, that some of those bigger lots that have the side room in there and they have a wide gate, I was told that they are allowed to park in there as long as they put cement.
As long as they get a second driveway approved, they absolutely are allowed to park on there. Yes.
Because there are some houses that have that.
There's many, yeah. Any other questions, folks? Anything online, Rebecca? I want to thank everybody for coming. Please, please, please spread the word. We really need this help. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I made my late payment of $20. I'm like, is that going to go on my record that I was delayed? No.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I've done this that funny thing a few times.
I think I talked to you on the phone.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I did have one question. Totally
Okay,
unrelated.
let me
I spoke to
jump.
you.
Yeah, I'm
I had-
listening.
I had put in a work order for an overhead light on Roadways, and
It was
I've never
probably
done that.
not me. It was probably one of our compliance team because I handle the events and business communications.
Oh, okay.
It was probably we all sound similar.
Okay. Well, no, I didn't
But
talk.
yeah.
I sent it. I filed one.
Oh,
I'd never
okay.
done this before.
Yeah, and Rebecca too is the one.
And it said give 30 days. SRP will come out and do that, and they did. So.
There's actually a statute that's specific to erecting and unapproved however, the gray side of it, what's the intent? The intent is to hopefully slow traffic down so that it doesn't break. So, is the sheriff's deputy go out right